Nothing. Why don't we get started? I was just waiting for you. Okay. Good evening. It's 6:15, and I wanted to get us started because I know people want to get home. It's not such a great day, so I'll try not to keep us here too long. I want to thank everyone here for coming out this evening on this rainy Thursday night for our latest in a series of Safe Streets, Safe City meetings. In the interest of allowing as many people to participate in this discussion this evening, the city manager's office has graciously arranged for the meeting to be recorded. That way that people that are not able to be here with us this evening can hear what's going on in the community, some of the things that we've planned, some of the things that we're doing, some of the things that we're looking to do, and they can be aware and also be reminded that we're doing as much as we can to keep the community safe. So I want to thank the city manager's office for that and for working to make certain that the various city department heads and city staffers could be present tonight. So thanks. We're holding this meeting in recognition that Cambridge is by and large a safe city. We're fortunate to have the kind of city where people largely feel free to walk the streets at night, regardless of their age, their race, their ethnicity, their sexual orientation, their gender. And we've worked hard to make sure that that remains true. But even in safe communities such as ours, and even as hard as we do work, we are not completely immune to the occasional episodes of crime and violence that unfortunately we have had. We've had a few shootings, we've had some stabbings, we have street fights, and other disturbing incidents that erupt from time to time. In just the past couple of months, we've had police alerts about shots being fired in various neighborhoods. We've also heard about a couple of suicides that have taken place. But at the end of the day, it's all up to us, city officials and area stakeholders, to come together to make certain that we are clear on how these incidents had happened, and that we're clear about what those responses are, and that we're clear about what steps must be taken to prevent similar incidents from occurring as we move forward. And also, we want to make sure that the citizens always know that we're just doing our best when these things happen to make sure it doesn't happen again. In holding these periodic Safe Street meetings, I have been holding these Safe Street meetings for a few years now, and during that time I've come to recognize that we really do need to focus on the summer months. Cities across the country do tend to see higher incidents of violent crime during the summer, when the temperatures rise and people are outside and they're interacting with each other more, and people have more idle time on their hands. You'll see in your agenda packets, I've included some of the policy orders that were inspired by some of our last year's Safe Streets meetings. And I think the questions these orders asked and the points that they raised continue to resonate. So I hope you'll take a moment to review the policy orders, and that will perhaps inform some of our discussion going forward. Before we jump in, I want to go around the room and have everyone introduce themselves, so we're certain of who's with us tonight. And following that, we're going to hear first from the police department. And it's right, and it will follow the agenda to provide some information about the most recent shooting incidents and about what steps are being taken to prepare for the summer month. And from there, we'll work our way through the balance of the agenda. So again, I just want to thank everybody for coming. I can't imagine you want to be any other place but hanging out in City Hall. But just if you were thinking about doing something else, thank you for choosing to come to this meeting, because I know summertime is upon us, I think, and we all wanted to have as much downtime as possible. But it's also important to have this discussion so that we're all apprised of what's going on and the citizens know what's going on. So let's just start by going around and giving who we are in our department. And again, in part because this is being televised, and people that may be viewing this, even if not now, later on, will know who was in the room having part of this discussion. And you folks here, please feel free, I insist, on coming down the table and join us. But we're going to start around here. By the time you get there, you'll be down here. So,
Steve DeMarco, Superintendent with the Cambridge Police Department in Sports Services Division.
thank you.
Hi, good evening. It's Jeremy Warnick. I'm the Director of Communications and Media Relations for the Police Department.
My name's Adam Patton, the Community and Strategic Partnerships Coordinator with the Cambridge Police.
I'm Dave DeGoo, the Public Safety Administrator for the Cambridge Housing Authority.
Kevin Braga, Director of Operations, Cambridge Housing Authority.
Shanrita Wakefield, District Manager, Cambridge Housing Authority.
Say it again.
Shanrita Wakefield.
Shavita?
Shanrita
Shanrita
Wakefield.
Wakefield.
Lisa Seaton, District Manager, Cambridge Housing Authority.
Thank you. Catherine?
Catherine Fenneman, Tutoring Plus.
Michelle Farnham, Department of Human Service Programs.
Susan Mintz, Office of Workforce Development, which is part of Human Services.
Neil Alpert, Office of Counselor Simmons.
And Councilor Simmons, and I chair this meeting. So let's get started by kind of going to the police department. Deputy Superintendent, correct? DeMarco, can you give us an update on the recent shootings that we had in and near the port? What CPD operational plans are for the summer, if you can? And I know there are a few of you from the police department, so please kind of jump in. But why don't we lead off with you, Deputy Superintendent? I know Superintendent Elu is on her way, so she can join us when she gets here.
Absolutely, thank you. Thank you, Councilor Simmons. Really appreciate the opportunity, and this is a great thing to do with making sure that we have appropriate plans in place, especially for the summer months. So having said that, I can report that violent crime is down 12% as compared to last year. But our property crime has a slight increase, and that's about 4%, which equates to about 31 incidents. And that's related to larceny of bicycle incidents and larceny from motor vehicle incidents. Now, talking about the shots fired or shooting incidents, we've had actually 6 shots fired reports up through the 10th. And with that, we've had 1 person shot, and that person was shot, I believe that was Elliott Street, and that was on the 12th of May. So we've had six shooting incidents. We've had 4 arrests out of those 6 incidents, and all have been in the port except for 2, and both of those incidents were down on Elliott Street.
It's Elliott Street.
Elliott near Harvard Square. Right in the area of the IHOP and the, you know, right in that area there. So we've made arrests, like I say, on 4 of the 6. There was one where there was a domestic incident that happened on Brookline Street, and that was on the April 24th, where a person fired rounds into the air. We still haven't identified that person. And there was an incident also where there were shots fired in an establishment at 16 Elliott Street, and we have yet to identify those individuals as well. So we're working on that. Recently, we've made 3 firearm-related arrests. As is today, we had a firearm arrest, a homeless 21-year-old at the intersection of Main and Portland Street. He was stopped for a totally separate incident, and he became combative with the officers, reached in his waistband, and the officers subdued him and found a .22 caliber automatic in his waistband. He was a homeless individual, 21 years old. Sunday, our patrol officers stopped a motor vehicle, and as a result of the stop, an 18-year-old Cambridge male was found to be in possession of a loaded firearm, automatic firearm. And that was at Portland and Washington Street. And the 21st of May, an individual was stopped and questioned in Clement Morgan Park, And while they were speaking to him, it was obvious to them that a firearm was near his waistband. A short pursuit, a foot pursuit ensued, and a automatic firearm, fully loaded firearm, was recovered off of him as well. So there has been these recent incidents where we've recovered loaded firearms, and we've had these incidents, these shooting incidents. But some of the things that we're doing to combat this, we've worked very closely because some of the information that we've received has been that there's increased tension between the port and some individuals from Somerville. As a matter of fact, one of the arrests that we made from a shooting incident on Elliott Street were 3 Somerville residents, and that was a shooting incident that happened where one of the individuals got shot in the shoulder. But that resulted in the 3 arrests from those Somerville individuals. Things have kind of quieted down since then, but we're still very proactive with this. We're working with the Somerville Police, and we're working with a grant called the Shannon Grant for, as Michelle knows, as we coordinating our efforts with the Somerville Police, and we're utilizing this grant to have these proactive patrols, both in uniform and in plainclothes officers, specifically deploying them late night into the areas of the port, and also they're deploying into Somerville as well. We also have a couple of significant things to report. Focused Deterrence Unit, which is a unit that looks at individuals who are causing the most social harm in the community. We've just enhanced it. We have 2 people on a full-time basis working that unit now, which is great. They're doing some great work with that. We want to focus in on these individuals and get them, and hopefully provide them with services, the option for services before they get into trouble, and that's what their main objective is.
So, Deputy Superintendent, before you go further down, focused deterrence is kind of a new word, and because this is being taped, I think it might be important if you pause and just say what focused deterrence is, so people that are viewing will understand.
It's a program that we have in the police department where we look at individuals through an analytics, who is causing the most social harm in the community, and we come up with a list, and we identify those individuals, and we go and we talk to them, and we provide them with information related to services, jobs, other activities that they could be doing, and through that, we work with them to try to help them, get them to go into a different pathway than to cause what social harm they're causing within the community, because it's different things. There's homelessness, there's alcohol issues, there's certainly serious crime issues. So we have to parse it out to what that person's involvement is, what the service needs are. And by doing that, we're able to focus in on these individuals and help them get to a place through services to where they want to be. And also the focused deterrence takes a look at people coming out of jail. Okay. And we provide them with services as well as they enter back into the community.
Thank you.
So we also, another significant thing, now we have detectives full-time looking at homicide incidents, and we have 2 significant anniversaries that are coming up. We have the 10-year anniversary of Jason Elcock, who was murdered back on June 16th, 2009, and he was killed up on 364 Ringe Ave at 3 o'clock in the morning, and he was found with multiple gunshots. So that investigation remains under investigation as well. Mm-hmm. And then there's a 5-year anniversary coming up on July 3rd. That's Kinsley David, 22-year-old, suffered a single gunshot wound in the head on Windsor Street, and that's coming up on the 5th-year anniversary as well. I want to offer and let people know that we've stood up a new anonymous crime tip hotline. This crime tip hotline is able to get out the information right away. It's 617-349-3121. And we stood this up because we're able to, someone can call in, provide information anonymously, or they can provide their callback information, and an email will get sent out with that information to supervisors in the investigation section, so there can be an immediate response to it. And so we're looking to, our summer deployment plan is going to try to be modeled after the 2018 Port Violence Task Force. That task force had a great success. It was reduced gun violence last year by 78% versus the spring of 2018. So what we plan on doing is we're going to be hiring extra patrols for that area and focus in on some of the hotspot areas, you know, from evidence-based, based on calls for service and such, and based on some of the intelligence that we're receiving and calls that we're receiving from the people in the community and letting us know what areas to be concerned with. So what we're going to do is also work in conjunction with our plainclothes officers to be put into those areas as well. So we want to have a focus on those areas with both high visibility patrols as well as undercover patrols in those areas. So one of the things that we did plan on doing is also some of the areas that are a little quieter, if it seems like there is a lot of activity in the areas where we've had other disproportionate violence, we are going to kind of collapse our patrols into those areas to kind of, you know, work to collapse the areas in terms of their response and ability to respond to things and to show of that we're around and we're available. In that way will be a couple of different things. What we're going to do is we're going to drive in through these areas we have special lights that we can put on, the blue lights, so people can visibly see that the police are there. They weren't just looking for a police car. They can also see the blue lights on the car. They also can see the patrols as they traverse the neighborhoods. One of the things that we've done is we've also dedicated Central Square, or walking team, Central and Harvard Square. We've stood up the substation in December. That has been pretty much a great success as well. There's been a 72% reduction in calls for service from January to April 2019 as compared to last year. But one of the things that I found remarkable with that is that people are actually coming to the substation and reporting things, and it's very timely, especially with overdose calls, medical calls, and crimes in progress calls, which is really fantastic, because otherwise they'd have to either, you know, call it in, or they'd have to go to East Cambridge to report an incident to the police station there. So that substation really allows them to, in the moment, get us information, which is fantastic. So far, the officers have responded to more than, in that area, 3,100 calls for service. So
Substation? At the substation?
in that area, yeah, through April. Not just that, but in that whole area.
Wow.
So that's fantastic. One of the success stories as well is the Dunkin' Donuts has indicated, the Dunkin' Donuts in Central Square has indicated that they've seen their sales increase, and their calls for service for the police have dropped dramatically. So,
Since the substation's been there?
yes, since the opening of the substation. So I think that just that enhanced bond with the officers working there on a consistent basis, working with the business in that neighborhood, has been a great success.
I can speak for the seniors that live around Central Square, 237 Franklin, 55. For 11 Franklin, they are very pleased to know that there is a police presence, particularly that is stationed in Central Square. and they say they feel safer. Now, they're still a little hesitant because some of the benches where people kind of hang out and haven't, and I don't know what we do about that. It's not particularly on our agenda. Some of the people that are spilling out of the wet shelter on Albany Street, and they do that even more once it gets warm. So that's still a problem. But in general, in terms of them just feeling safer, they feel like they're very safer. So they're grateful about the substation.
And I think we're addressing it well with our multidisciplinary outreach team, where there's, every Wednesday, there's the patrols that go out, and they go out with the services to provide access to services for these individuals who are at those locations.
Do they go out during the day or in the
Yes,
evening?
it's during the day. And they have a meeting prior because they have people that they want to focus on and what areas they're at. So they go to different areas within the city, but primarily Central Square is a hotspot for their patrols.
Okay. Good. And do you want to speak, the only other thing that was important for me to know more about is what kind of information can you give us around, there were 2 attempted suicides in Central Square, is that all, what was that all about? And then there was 2 attempted, I think, in Central Square, and then 2 successful suicides in the Alewife. And do we know what caused that, and what are we doing to sort of, one, let the community know that we're trying to address that issue, but also, is there any way to be proactive?
I think the way to be proactive, our number of mental health calls has gone up dramatically, while our number of actual violent crimes has gone down dramatically. And our mental outreach and homeless outreach is such an important part of our patrols to respond to these individuals who are in crisis. The one that happened up in North Cambridge, the suicide there where the person jumped from the Ringe Ave, that was somebody from out of town who was in a crisis, and that happened up there. The one in Central Square, we were able to actually talk that person down. And the person actually was asking for one of our offices, which was great. And through conversation, we were able to facilitate that person to get them to the hospital and get them the service they need. So we realize absolutely that, a lot of times people are in crisis. We deal with people on their worst day sometimes, and we have to get them the help they need. And a lot of it has to do with how we talk with them, how we interact with them. In this recent training we had with the ICAT, which is Integrated Communications Assessment and Tactics, which was developed by PERF, the Police Executive Research Forum, I think that goes direct, and Commissioner Bard brought that to us, and I think that goes exactly to this kind of thing, where we're talking and we're interacting with individuals in a different way to help them get to the place they need to be, to get them the services they need, which is important.
So just to go back to the one at Alewife, I thought there were 2, one from the station and one from Ringe Tower.
Yes, one from Ringe Tower, and there was one on the garage of the Alewife station as well. That was a fatal as well.
Right, and do we know anything about, one person you said was from out of town? I don't know which one was the out of town.
The out-of-town one I know was, because it was on us, it was on Ringe Ave. The other one was on the transit police and the state police. So we don't have a lot of information. I can find out more information if needed, and I absolutely can follow up with you. I don't have a lot of information, but I know that the person jumped from the garage and did die related to the injuries.
And I think it would be good for us to know. Was
Sure.
it someone from Cambridge? Was someone from Cambridge that was in distress, or was it, too, an out-of-town person? Not that you want to know of anyone ever hurting themselves to the degree that it's fatal, but I think it's important that our residents know that it wasn't someone that we overlooked or missed in some way.
I agree 100%. It's really important that we need to know that so we can make sure our service providers are following up.
And to your knowledge, because this person, to go back to Ridge Towers, got into the building, knocked out the window, and then jumped out, to your knowledge, has Ridge Tower put some other or additional precautions so that no one else could do the same thing, like you can't knock the window out? Or, I mean, I know the catch-22 is if there were a fire, you want to be able to get in if that's one of the ways to get in, but you also don't want people to find a way to jump out.
Yeah, my understanding was that this individual went in with a crowd, went in with other individuals and wasn't stopped, and then went to that floor and knocked out the window with a hatchet, and then that was what happened on that one. So,
That's quite unfortunate.
yeah.
But again, I guess it's to what degree that we can go back to Ridge Avenue Apartments, I guess they call it Ridge Towers Apartment, and say, you need to do more to make sure the building is kept safe. And that would be a recommendation that I would like to see by way of even a letter to say, unfortunate that was, but makes people feel unsafe when those things can happen around them. And I guess the part that was unsettling to me was I received a photo sent to me from someone else. I thought I needed to see it, of the victim on the ground. And I said, now how am I going to get this out of my head? So it was pretty horrible. And the person that took the picture must have been a young person, because they said it was something a young person would say that I'm not going to repeat on the air. So that was troubling too. Not only was the fact that someone threw themselves out the window, but then it was such that a young person be able to witness it, take a picture of it, and then send that picture out to people. So however we can get a hold of that. I don't know if it's education saying if you see something like that, you don't kind of pass it around, because it's disconcerting for other folks.
No, it wasn't. For us to actually see that as well was very concerning, and what we did is we actually reached out and tried to get that removed from the post, but...
Social media.
The what? I'm sorry?
From social media.
Yes, from the social media, but they wouldn't allow it, so... But we did try to reach out and make sure, and try to get that removed.
I appreciate it. And I don't know what the secret sauce is to say to a young person, that's not the kind of thing you want to pass around, because that's somebody's something, and that's not what you would want to have on social media if your family member was so distraught that they would do something like that, and then now they got to see it forever and ever and ever because it's being reposted on social media. So how we get into that would be important. Is there anything you want to add? Any questions from anyone else? Okay. Anything you want to add to those number of items? Any other issue or concern that I should know as a city councilor to pass on to the city council that we should be looking to do?
Well, one of the things I think now Superintendent Elo's here, and I know I directed what our patrol plan was, but probably not as good as the superintendent could, articulate it. So I don't know if you want to just talk about the patrol plan that we have in place.
Sure. Good evening, Councilor. I'm not really sure how much you covered, but I'll just give a quick snapshot, and then if people have some questions, you can direct them. But our efforts are going to be, and I want to look to Keston a little bit about our community outreach. It's going to be a combined effect where we're going to be doing, heavy patrols in the areas that we've had some violence, Central Square, Harvard Square, really making sure that our officers are out there and engaged. We have a full deployment of bike patrols now, and it's really the focus of the bike patrol. It's 7 days a week when staffing allows, but our priorities are going to be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, where we're trying to have at least 4 officers on the bikes during the day, and then 4 officers between 3 p.m. and 11 p.m., and they're to be out in the community, engaged with folks. The other thing is, to address some of the gunshots that we've had, is those are happening in the middle of the night. So we really want to make sure that we have our officers out and present in those areas. So IHOP right now is a concern. It seems to have picked up in activity. Central Square, when the bars are closing, we want to make sure that our officers are out there, omnipresent. If there are groups hanging around, what I'd really like to see them do is just so if people see it, they're not shocked, but to have their lights on as they're cruising around so people just see the police everywhere. So if anybody has a thought about doing anything, they're not going to do it because the police are there. So our goal is not to go out there and shake people up. Our goal is to go out there and engage, but also let people know that the police are there. We're going to combine that with, we have a robust community outreach. We're working with the Pentecostal Tabernacle, doing some things at Clement Morgan Park. We have some basketball leagues. We actually have a team of 4 officers who actually played Tuesday night, and they were way out of their comfort zone. These guys are middle-aged, and they were out there, shaking it up with the kids, and that's really what we want our officers to focus on: engagement, and just being present so that people, feel safe, but also so that there's no violence.
Good. And that's really good to know, particularly in what we call hotspot areas. I don't know what it is about the warm weather in Central Square, or maybe it's because I spend most of my time in Central Square. Just recently, there was a guy that certainly was inebriated, and he walked into the tavern through the window. You know how the windows are open? He walked in, went through a private party, came out the door, and then wanted to knock all the tables down. And the good news was, I would say that the police were there in 15 minutes, and they didn't beat him up or throw him around, but they did move him on. And I have no idea where he came from. So I guess the bad news was that he was just sort of out of his, sensibilities. The good news was we took care of it before it really disturbed the social atmosphere at the tavern. And what it is about Central Square that draws folks, I don't know, but I'm interested to see how the flashing lights through the squares has an impact, because people tend not to act out when they think the police are around. So that can't do anything but help, I would hope.
And if I can just add, the Central Square, the substation that we have that I'd love to put in your name one day, that is really making a difference. So we have 4 officers that are dedicated to the square. They're out there on bikes, and their job is to really look for the people that are on the benches that might be inebriated, figuring out if they need services. Again, it's about engagement, but it has made a dramatic difference in calls for service. We have a percentage drop. The Dunkin' Donuts in Central Square, they removed their chairs, but they've seen a dramatic decrease in disorder there, but also an increase in revenue. So those units are really making a difference in the square.
Just curious, did Dunkin' Donuts do that on their own, or was it because we prodded them?
I think it was a collaborative effort. But I know that that's pretty controversial, and some people want them to put their benches back in.
Well, we'll see. Oh, thank you very much. That's helpful. Let's just move on a little bit. I don't think we have anyone from the Cambridge Health Alliance here, correct? All right. So let's go to the Housing Authority a little bit. Or before we jump to the police, Kessin, I know you've been doing a lot of community outreach stuff. Is there anything you want to add? And we do have our district administrative manager from the Housing Authority, if you want to add anything when we move to the Housing Authority.
So we have a few things that we're thinking about just in general. Over the summer, each basketball league will have an assigned officer to it, between the Devontae Nail Basketball League, the Fast Break League, which is for the middle school students, Crunch Time, which is the high school students in the neighborhood, and then the 3-on-3 with PT, the partnership. We have the 4 officers, as the super mentioned earlier, playing in the league, which runs on Tuesday nights.
So we're taping this, so you're going to have to speak directly into your mic.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
So those leagues basically have officers assigned or either playing in the leagues.
Okay.
And then we have the Sullivan Chambers basketball that takes place at 119 Windsor from 8 to 12 Friday and Saturday nights, where the youth can come in and recreation and have some good times, just play some basketball there. Some additional programs that we have officers involved with, the summer programs like Boys to Men, Hip Hop Transformation, and then we have officers assigned to a boxing program that takes place with Boys to Men and in the evening between 4 and 5:30 for middle school and high school students. Some things that we're just thinking about planning and putting in the works down the road is some things that we want to do more in Clement Morgan Park that we could talk about later on as those come to light, just in general. And then for the summer, we have the Summer Youth Academy as usual, which takes place Monday through Thursday from 9 to 3 o'clock with the Mayor's Summer Program. Students come in there and they work with us along with the young officers assigned to each summer camp.
So slow down, because you talk really fast.
Okay.
So when you say Summer Youth Academy, what's the age group? And it's part of the Mayor's Youth Program, so it's 14
To 18 years old,
14 to 18, and it's going to run during the course of the summer?
6 weeks of the summer.
Okay.
And then we'll have the Summer Academy, the summer camps, which is a sports leadership academy. An officer will be assigned there. The Boys and Girls Club Empowerment Camp at the Frisoli, City Peace Building Bridges, that's at the Moore Youth Center. Mission Possible as well, we'll have an officer assigned there.
So Mission Possible?
Mission Possible,
And that's at the Mission?
that's at the Moore, the Mission, the Moore Youth Center.
Okay.
We have the Moses also has the Boys to Men group that we have officers assigned there that work
Is
there.
that something that's been ongoing, or is this new?
Ongoing things that we will continue.
And what's the age group for the
Boys to Men,
yes,
14 to 18.
14 to 18 boys to men? Who does that?
That is with Terrell Dortch, Travis Brooks, and the Moses Youth Center staff.
Okay. You know what would be good, I'm going to be asking everyone to do through Neil, is it'd be nice to map this to see, what I would like to see is, if someone were to ask me what's going on in this area, particularly these hot spots, I might be able to say, here, this is our calendar of events, if you will. Not that. I didn't mean to say that. I didn't mean to say that, matter of fact. I mean, now it has everything he just said in it. What I was looking for a little bit more was literally just a calendar. That kind of, and then maybe later on, or at the bottom of it, just says Cambridgeport, Riverside. Do you follow what I'm saying? I mean, I've seen that, and you can pass it back over to me. It tends to be a little text-rich to me, so I know when I've tried to read it, it wasn't as easy as I thought. So I like it. I'm glad it exists. What I would like to see is something that almost looks just like a regular calendar, so you can look day by day. So that's what I was thinking of.
We could try to do something like that. The problem is there's a lot going on, and so
That's why I want it on a calendar.
in order to put it on a calendar, it would be really dense.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm actually trying to put together events on a calendar. There are both events and there are programs and there are activities.
Right,
And
right.
so it becomes a lot to search through to create one document. I've been trying to calendar those things so we can figure out what are the reoccurring things, what are the things. So what's in here are programs and activities for children and youth, which don't necessarily include some of the other things. So trying to put those together.
And what I'm thinking, and thank you, and I appreciate it, because Human Services has been doing it for a while, and they do a really good job about it. But for some of us, it's the one stop, quick look kind of thing, and I know what I want, or what I think would work. I don't necessarily, because technology is nothing I can do very well. But somehow, because what Kessler just mentioned, which may not be in there, but speaks specifically to issues of trying to keep young people, and we always talk about what does young people mean, because, is it 10 to 13, or is it 15 to 21, or is it 18 to 30? All that's out there. How do we let people know, or if someone were to ask us how we got that, what is going on in the neighborhood, how do we get it in a succinct way? But let's go back to Kesson so he can finish.
So just finishing, we have a partnership also with the Gately, which is My City, My Voice. The Discovery Program, which takes place at the Russell Youth Center. Girls Taking Action, that takes place at the Russell Youth Center in a collaboration with the YMCA. Those are the basic things that we have going on right now in the community. They serve ages from 14 to 30 years old.
Okay.
The 3-on-3 is a 16 to 30 years old league where everyone's able to make their own teams. So we're just thinking about that impact that we can create there and how we take it somewhere else and move it forward. There's other plans of action that, like I said, that we could bring up later on at the next meeting, but we want to make sure those things are actually thought through when they come to light.
again, there's an incredible amount of things that's going on, and that's great to know, because I didn't know that. And I just wonder how many other people might not know it. So one, they don't take advantage of it, or other people that don't have children necessarily saying, well, what are you doing for young adults? And I can now say, well, not yet. I can see it in writing, can maybe pass it around to people, say, this is what we're doing, and, we're always trying to do more.
Just to add on to the superintendents in Kesson, so two other things. We talked a little bit about gun violence. This past Saturday, we just held our 5th community gun buyback event. And actually, we held it in 2 locations, one at Pentecostal Tabernacle and a second at the Reservoir Church. That was staffed by several officers, folks within the sheriff's office and Middlesex sheriffs, the churches, and community volunteers. We were able to get 30 guns from those 2 events on Saturday, turned in, and in some cases, some loaded, primarily from our elderly population that were cleaning out their homes after a loved one had passed away and didn't know what to do with the guns, and we're bringing them to the event. What's really great about the event, though, is it's really started to create a model for other nearby municipalities that want to do something similar, and they've essentially used the Cambridge template and are now replicating it in their own jurisdictions. So there's a regional approach happening this year for the first time in a few years.
A regional
Approach to the gun buybacks. So actually coming up this Saturday, Newton is holding one, and they're essentially replicating what we've done here in Cambridge.
Wow.
Arlington is holding one the following Saturday, and Watertown's holding one the Saturday after that. So for 4 Saturdays in a row, Cambridge and these other communities have all come together to offer this to their residents. The other element in terms of speaking to young people and programming is we just wrapped up our recruiting for our cadet program, which is the first time that we've offered this program since the early 1980s. And our goal is to have 10 to 15 cadets come on board in November. It's a 2-year program. It's a paid program. And a number of the folks, the majority of everyone in the room from the Cambridge police side have been actively involved and pouring a lot of energy into it, trying to recruit. And we're happy to report that we had over 30 applicants for those 10 to 15 slots. So we'll go through the exam process, the background process, and then ultimately identify those candidates that are going to be joining us in November.
How old are the cadets?
So the cadet program is intended for individuals 18 to 23 and Cambridge residents.
Great, thank you. Justin, did you have more that you wanted to add?
One last thing, just to go back, we were also thinking about, and we have piloted and exploring a Explorers program, which is basically for rising 7th graders coming out of 6th grade and trying to build this pipeline towards policing and thinking about that. So we've been in the schools recruiting there. We have some small numbers at the moment, but we're going to keep the door open right now up until September. But it's actually for 7th graders. We're looking to recruit 15 7th graders, and they will take place on Monday nights once a month between 6:30 and 7, between 5:30 and 7 o'clock, basically throughout the school year. So it's for 10 months of the school year.
And what's the cadet program to do?
This is the Explorers program, so it's a pipeline to the cadet program. So what would happen is they would commit for 2 to 3 years, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, go off into the youth academy for the summer program, then transition themselves hopefully into the cadet program by the time they graduate high school.
That's great. Thank you. Anything else you wanted to add? That's pretty fantastic. Good to know. Moving to our Housing Authority, I don't believe we have anyone from Homeless Rehab, but I just wanted to recap that last June, they were, according to Homeless Rehab at that time, they were going to hire a new security vendor to engage their 4 locations. If some of you remember, we were having, one of the summers, we had a lot of trouble with CAS 1 and CAS 2, and a lot of it was around they did not have an adequate security staff, and so I don't know, and I don't know if anyone here knows, did they indeed hire a new security staff? And they were also going to be looking at Columbia Terrace, Class 1 and Class 2, because they were scheduled to see some longtime tenants move out, and I don't know if that indeed happens. Does anyone know? I'll have to reach out to HRI, I think it is. that handles that building. More specifically then, to the CHA, it was stated that they were working to create a non-dead zone on their property so that there was no natural space where people could park their cars outside the flow of traffic, in the hopes that this would stem some of the atmosphere that led to late-night summertime violence. Do we have any update on that?
So I think Mike Johnson had talked about that at a previous meeting. And what I believe that is referring to is when you drive into some of our older developments, there's one way in and one way out, and there's spots where folks can park their cars where there's not traffic flowing by those spots. So if you go out to the new Jefferson Park development out on Ringe Ave, the old Jefferson Park State looks much different than it used to. But not only are the buildings new, you can drive through there like a regular neighborhood. So you can drive in one side, drive out the other. The neighborhood feel is much like you're on Clifton Street or Montgomery Street or any of those other streets up there where you can drive around. And the federal side of Jefferson Park, which is the older side now, is still set up the old way, where you can drive in one way. There's Jackson Circle there where you can drive in and drive out, and it still kind of promotes that environment where folks can congregate and park. We're meeting with architects now to design the new Jefferson Park Federal. No plans are finalized yet, but if there's the opportunity to do it the same way as the state side, where it is set up like a regular neighborhood of North Cambridge, where you can drive in and drive out, and if people congregate, they're on the street where cars are constantly flowing by, and it's not set up how it used to be.
That'd be important to know, because I know that was a huge problem, and I know I'm still curious to find out how or what's going on with Cast 1 and Cast 2 Columbia Terrace, because the work that we're going to be doing in Clement Morgan Park is going to be influenced in part by what happens in Columbia Terrace. You know, so if you push everybody, if you activate Clement Morgan Park, people that don't want to get into the into alternative activities will go into the terrace to do them because it has that vulnerability. So I will be reaching out to, I think it's HRI it's under their jurisdiction, just to find out what's going on with that building. I don't think we have anyone from the Market Fuller House, and I don't want to lean on you, Russell, but I'll lean on you, Russell. Anything to report from your aspect of what's going on and what's being planned for this summer, just to kind of activate those sort of spaces that I want to call them vulnerable spaces where we found negative activities happening.
Right now, we have the Summer of Peace basketball that sets to start June 22nd. So it should follow it, the 3-on-3 with the PT and Cambridge Police. Should follow, we'll be on Saturdays.
So you're doing, this is different from what Kesson just talked about?
Yeah, this one is 5-on-5. It's a wider range of ages. We have like an older guy on every team, younger guy, and then it's the ages 17 to 30. And that's gonna start June 22nd. We had 2 drafts for the past 2 Wednesdays that just lets them come out and play pickup.
Okay.
And the teams are all set, and they're gonna start June 22nd.
And how often will they play and where?
Every Saturday, Clement Morgan Park. Okay. It'll be, I think, 7 and 8. And what did he tell me? And then July 20th, they have some block party. It's a block party at Green Rose.
Clement Morgan or
no, Green Rose.
And there's a block party. Is that the same block? No.
No.
So when's that block party?
Which one?
Yours, because we're talking to you. Is it the July 4th block party? Or is that something different?
July 6th.
That's still July 4th.
That's a completely different block party.
So there's a July 6th block party at Clement Morgan.
No, this one.
Okay. I can't keep it straight.
All right, so this the July 6th.
Is someone doing something on July 6th?
Yes. The July 6th. We was hoping to do that in Washington Elms. Not at Green Rose. And July 20th is the Margaret Fuller's block party.
Okay, so there's the Margaret Fuller block party.
Yeah.
And this is why we need a calendar. So there's the Margaret Fuller block party from what to what?
That's 12 to 5, July
The
20th.
5. And then there's somebody's block party from 7
That would fall under Men of the Port.
Men of the Port
Yeah, that would fall under the Men of the Port.
Still working out the details.
at Green Rose.
No, we
I
got
think
the
Green
details.
Rose is a great place to have it.
But all right, since you opened it up. So the problem with Green Rose is this. It started in Washington Elms.
Okay.
It only moved to Green Rose because Washington Elms started doing construction.
Okay.
So that's the only reason why it ever went to Green Rose. And the way some of us feel is that a lot of things that go on in the port financially are based on those two developments, but no one does nothing inside there. So they always have to leave their comfort zone to do anything around there.
Okay.
So people say, hey, if you do it inside, then the outside people don't want to come in. But them two developments, they always have to go out to do anything. Like there's absolutely nothing in there.
Just for Newtown Court in Washington Elms?
No, it's never just for.
Okay.
It's always been for everybody, but it started in there because,
Okay.
put it this way, all the men of the port all grew up in one of those housing developments.
Okay. Well, as a woman of the port that lived in those developments for a number of years, and those of you that remember my son Anthony, who grew up there, I mean, I see the perspective, and it's probably not going to be something that we're going to talk about or work out right here now on the camera.
No, you won't.
But let's have some conversation about it, because, see, I feel like all the port belongs to me. You know, not just Washington Elm, Newtown Court. And I lived there for close to a decade. And I love Newtown Court. It was a wonderful place to live. It was a great place to raise my kids. You know, and with the exception of my son dying early, my kids flourished there. And I could say he flourished there too, because, you know, he grew up to be a man. So that being said, so let's have some discussion around that. I understand what you're saying. You know, I just have a little bit of a different perspective on it, but let's talk about it.
All right.
But we'll keep the date the same. You know, maybe the compromise is we block off the street. I don't know, but.
Yeah, you're in. I was going to talk to you anyways.
Okay, so, but continue. You
That's
telling
all.
us about, so there's the July 20th League, there's the 7-6,
June 22nd, the league starts.
the June 22nd.
Summer of Peace basketball.
Okay, so, June 22nd, the 5-on-5 league
Summer of Peace,
starts.
yeah.
So what was July 20th?
It's, potluck block party. I don't really know what it is. Yeah, it's
At
Margaret
Rose
Fuller
Green.
House, though.
That's at Rose Green.
That's at Green
Rose
Rose.
Green.
Rose Green.
So why do I have 720 Margaret Fuller House, 12 to 5?
That's 720.
They're sponsoring the Margaret Fuller House.
At Green Rose Park. There you go. I got it. A little slow, but I got it. All right. And again, I think this is so important, so much. There's got to be a way that we can put this in a formal way that we can, particularly in these areas that we are deliberately programming, so people have a lot to do, but other people know there's a lot to do there and will be less likely to come and do it because it's just too busy and too active to want to be around doing anything that's not proactive. Okay. Other things, Russell, that you want to share with us?
So the 9-week program, that's been
Yes.
going on. Susan, can you help me? It's probably been a year. It's probably been a good year. So we actually sealed that deal, and it's working fine, but, you know, everyone's not going to completely succeed. So we had some people got terminated for excessive absences. Some people just let it go. But
Okay.
as far as...
And this is the 9-week that sits outside the other 9-week. This is our 9-week.
Yeah, the one we talked about
Good.
with the meeting, and Susan definitely put it together. And a lot of people have worked. Like I think, like right now, right today, I have like 8 people cleared to work. They're just waiting to be called.
Great.
So I have to be giving them well over 10 a month.
And we are paying them what we pay all city.
Oh, it's the same thing.
Okay.
It's just what you said here, it just skips the lottery process.
Okay, just good to know. I'm glad. I wasn't sure that had gone forward, so I'm real proud about that. And how do we get the word out? And not just to participate. So this, all these great things that we're doing. We're doing it to curb violence in our street, to make our streets safe, but it also says these are good things. And how do we tell that story? For someone who grew up in the Port, still lives in the Port, I'm tired of the Port always being looked upon as the places where all the bad things happen. And how do we turn the corner on that? And how do we, if, let's say, the media is not going to tell that story, I would love to hear from all of you here some ways that we might be able to tell the stories of some of the good things that are happening and not depend on local media to tell our story, because, again, if someone gets shot, big spread in the newspaper. But we were only halfway across the room, and we've talked about so much rich programming, a 9-week program for men and women, correct? Men and women.
Men and women.
Of the Port. Lots of physical activity, focused kinds of things that keep you going and growing. Fewer shootings across the city, and no one's telling that story. So, I would, as we kind of go through the whole room, let's turn on the other side and say, what can we do to put a positive spin? How do we go out there and tell the story that someone else seems not interested in telling about us? Anything else, Russell, you want to share with us?
No, next meeting,
Okay, well, we'll talk more.
the one we talk about Washington Elms.
We'll talk about Washington Elms, Russell, yes. And we heard from you, Superintendent. Do you want to add anything?
If I could just add briefly, I mean, one of the things that we're doing with our Cadet Program, the Explorers Program, the Summer Youth Program, it really is, reaching out to at-risk kids and giving them something to think about. What do you want to think about in your career? So I just wanted to say that's kind of the goal, I think, of the Mayor's Summer Youth Program plus the Explorers Program feeding into the Cadet Program, giving some kids that might not have seen a path, maybe in policing, to see how they can serve their community. So I just wanted to put that plug in there.
Thank you. Lisa, did you want to say anything or add anything?
Yes, just that also to mention, as you had talked about the hot spots, and one of the hot spots on my development, Washington Elms, Newtown Court, and I just wanted you to be aware of, you may have already heard some complaints from your constituents regarding our parking lot that is on the Harvard Street side.
Sonny Center parking lot?
The Harvard Street, is that
Harvard
what?
Street, no.
Harvard Street. Across from Port
Yes,
Landing.
the one that was all lit up last Sunday.
Yeah. So for several months, I've heard complaints from our residents regarding the parking lot being a hangout for young men, women coming there in their vehicles, selling drugs, smoking pot, loud music. Sometimes there's some brawls or fights. And residents are complaining that they feel that they're held hostage in their apartment, that they're afraid to come out because of it's intimidating to walk past or walk through the development and see these gang of, young people hanging out. You just don't know what to expect. Some residents were bold enough to engage the crowd and to get them to move on. And residents have also complained to me that they feel disappointed because when they do call the police, that the response that they're getting from the police is not quick enough, or not at all. So these reports have just been coming in, and I've just been bombarded with complaints about this particular spot.
And is it coming from a particular door? I know the parking lot you're talking about.
I'm still waiting to hear back. I've kind of put the word out that, if you can come to me with information as to which door or which family is involved, so that we can reach out to that family and have a meeting with them and get some things resolved. But again, what the residents are concerned that they're disappointed with the lack of response from the police department, and they're hoping that the police would add more or do something to kind of beef up patrols, especially after dusk and in the wee hours of the morning.
Right.
And what I'm hearing, that these crowd or these gang of young men and women are not necessarily from our area,
Yeah.
but they're coming in from the outside. And we just need to discourage them
Right.
from using this as a hangout. We need to move them on.
So let's hear from Superintendent Elo and Deputy Superintendent DeMarco on this, because I know you talked about the lit police cars. I mean, what kinds of solutions could we bring to this neighborhood? Because what she's saying, I actually witnessed, and I came home at 12 midnight, and they were on fire.
Yeah.
And it wasn't physical, but it was raucous.
Right. And I hear you, and I'm sorry to hear about the experiences that residents are having. And our approach, it really has to, it's a kind of a sensitive approach. And what we really are stressing our officers is just, if you see those large groups, to be present, to engage. It's really difficult, because I do understand with the legalization for marijuana, people think they can smoke anywhere. So our approach has not necessarily been enforcement. I think if we see something that is criminal, we have to take action.
Right.
But we are dealing with predominantly communities of color, young men and women, and we're just trying to deal with this in a very thoughtful manner. There are some people that we're concerned about. We do have information, and so we know who kind of, and Superintendent DeMarco can talk about this, who the people that are, so there's a little feud between Cambridge and Somerville and some of the kids, so we know who the kids are that we're worried about, and that's where we have to focus our attention. But in the summer months, there are going to be more kids out there. What I can promise you is that we're going to be out there, we're going to engage with these young people. So I think a lot of times residents might want to see arrests being made or something like that, and our approach is very different. And if there's anything we can do to go into your community development, just to talk about what our approach is, and if you see us out there, this is what we're doing, and why you might not see the enforcement that you're hoping to see. It's a real challenging issue, I just have to say.
As a matter of fact, we're having a meeting with the police commissioner on Monday, June 24th, with the tenant council at the Pisani Center, along with management, because just the complaints have just ramped up. Tenants can't sleep at night. Again, they can't even enjoy walking their children through the site.
To the Cambridge Housing Authority's credit, they've done such extraordinary work in beautifying both developments. People that visit me from out of town and want to know where the projects are, and I said, well, I can't take you to the projects, but I can show you where some of our affordable housing is. And they're always kind of taken aback, because it doesn't look like traditional affordable housing or projects, as they often will call them. But that being said, I witnessed what you said. Again, it was after 12 midnight, but it wasn't violent. The little bit that I witnessed was, so-and-so can't come in my house, I'm not going to put up with them. But they're screaming at the top of their lungs, and it's 12 o'clock midnight. And there were 3 officers, and they were trying to kind of calm the tempers down. And so I don't know. I mean, I want to offer, so I'm going to pose a question. It's CHA property. Can CPD have a car there, or kind of roll in and roll out fairly often? Would better light, I'll tell you, I think the parking lot is dark, but is better lighting happening? And do people clearly understand the law around the use? Because you said smoking marijuana, it is legal, but if anyone has read the leases, you can't, would you have to be 6 miles away from the development, up on a hill where the wind's blowing in the opposite direction? It just doesn't seem like you can even smoke anywhere near legally if you're in a subsidized housing place. Am I wrong?
No, you're
So
not.
those are I don't know, I mean, I'm looking at Police and Housing Authority people, because this is June, and they were pretty agitated, and you're now saying it's not gotten better, or it's getting
ramped up
worse.
a lot.
So what do we do? What are your suggestions?
I would look at Kessin and Russell and, even over, I do think it has to be, that's part of some of our partnerships, trying to get some activities for these young people to do. But you're right, when it's midnight.
It's 12
we used
o'clock
to
in the
have Well, we
morning.
used to have midnight basketball because we knew that kids were out, and they needed something to do, they needed someplace to go. For me, just, off the top of my head, enforcement is not necessarily the answer. So we have to think, working collaboratively with housing, with some of our community partners, what's the best way to address this as a community? And I don't know that it just can be the police. We can go out there and move people along, but I think it has to be, we need a bigger approach.
I see Russell and Kessin want to say something.
Let me
so
just say, I just want to say one thing, because my meter's
Say two.
running out. But, no, so I don't know how you solved the problem, but I've definitely seen 3 and 4 cruisers go in that exact parking lot probably 5 times this week. Okay. So I don't know what they're doing when they get back there, but they're definitely breaking them up. Okay. Probably like once every 4 or 5 hours. I've witnessed it.
I'm going to throw it back on the housing authority.
Yes.
Are there some bad actors that need to be encouraged to find greener pastures or just another pasture? You know what I knew the housing authority used to have a policy through which if you couldn't get your act together, they said, we love you, everybody, but if you are drawing the wrong kind of people to your home, we're going to have to either ask you to, we're going to ban that person, and if they don't stay away, we're going to move you out. Has that changed?
No, that hasn't changed, and we've had some evictions from Washington Elms and Newtown Court over the past year. I'd say, just to add on to the CPD's credit and Commissioner Barnes' credit, as soon as Dave reached out to kind of pass this information along, we definitely have seen an increase in police presence. Commissioner Bard agreed to come out and meet with the residents, so that the response has been very positive in that regard. I'd also like to add that we think a lot of these folks that congregate there are not CHA residents. I think there's been some recent arrests out of this parking lot. They have not been CHA residents who have been arrested off of here. So when that does happen and we can tie any of the activity back to our residents, we take that extremely seriously and enforce our lease to the full extent that we can.
So we have focused deterrence. Can we have like focused compliance or focused community, which says you can be here, but you can't be here and act up. And so, what, you want a T-shirt? You can be here, but you can't be here and active?
One more thing.
I think that's one of the things, and that's probably one of the biggest things that we ask our officers to do. And again, I'm sorry to hear that as well. That's not what we want to hear. Obviously, we don't want our residents to be in such peril like that. It's disheartening to me. So I'm going to make it very pointed to our detectives and our officers that respond to that area, that what is the requirement for them and what they need to be doing. And it's really engagement, and it's engagement in terms of having conversations that look at you disrupting the residents in this area. It's fine, we'll move to another area, and you can have your activities in those areas, your conversations, nothing illegal, but you can have those conversations in those areas that would not disrupt the residents in that area right there. So, I mean, those are the kind of conversations I think it resonates when you tell them that it's not us that we're telling you. We're asking you on behalf of the residents in this area to please take this somewhere else. If we need to arrest, we will arrest, and that's not off the table. It's never off the table with people who are bad actors, but that's not our primary response.
Well, I
it's
appreciate
engagement.
the fact that, again, when I walked over there, the police were there, and there was no roughhousing, there was no bravado, if you will. It was, the police trying to say, calm down, please go in your house, that kind of thing, and these people were pretty riled up, and I don't know what, I'm using all the good thinking in this room around this table is, what can we do? The other thing I wanted to come back to, that Lisa said she thought some of the people were for Somerville, and when we say Somerville, is it the Mystic Valley Parkway Housing Development? And what do? Put up a sign, no Mystic Valley Parkway residents can allowed? I mean,
Those guys are not there.
huh?
They're not hanging on the back, the Mystic Valley
Okay,
guys.
so then who is it? Do
So-
we know, and what do we do?
As you look at it, it's young men that may have been born and raised in the port, have moved out to other areas and towns, but they come back to congregate there because that's where they're originally from, where they were raised. So you have that type of thing going on where you're outside, but you know everyone's back on this side of things. So when you come back to Cambridge, you hang out in the port where you were from. So there's moments where you will see those cars come in, there will be rockets, they will be hanging out, and as we have noticed, the officers are definitely going in, flashing the lights. At some nights, they're flashing lights at night, things of that nature, pushing people out. And then once we all know, once you do that for a moment, 30 seconds, 20 minutes, it doesn't matter. When they leave, they circle back around. That's just the nature of it. That's what happens. So it's like a cat and mouse game of getting people in and out. That's the biggest thing. And then for the young people that don't live there, that don't want to be harassed, we notice that some people don't really want to deal with, hey, my car's in the parking lot, I can't get my car out, things like that. They got my license plate. So people are coming in small numbers, but it's really like if they're doing a video shoot, everyone comes down. That's when you're seeing the big lights and things like that. But if they're not doing those type of things, it's a little different.
So what's the solution?
I'm gonna sway you for a later meeting. Nobody knows each other in the community. Like the people complaining don't know each
So let's have a
other.
block party at midnight.
No, I'm not saying have a block party, and I'll address that too because the Cambridge Police last two incidents, they wasn't the actual hanging out. They wasn't the same people. They were, but it was more of like he said, there was two video shoots. That's why you seen an excessive amount of people.
Oh, you really talking about real video?
Yeah, they had two video
Making
shoots.
it up.
And that's why one night I think there was over
Video
100
shoots of
people
what they
there.
tell.
And then another daytime,
Pop
it
music.
was like 70
They're
people.
making music videos?
But
Music videos.
you know what?
serious.
I can promise you probably when there was 150, 90 of them won't be back around to another video shoot.
And what were we video shooting?
They shooting
Their
their little
music.
rap songs.
Their rap songs, their music.
But with the community not knowing each other, I'm just saying once again, because I grew up there, right?
So, all right.
No, I just want to show you
We're gonna
something.
get, I'm gonna get a bunch of senior citizens. We're gonna come
No.
down at 11 o'clock. We're gonna do a video
No.
shoot. They're saying, you don't have to leave, but you can't stay here. That's gonna be what it is.
No, so my point is that, guess what? If the community knew each other, trust me, someone is in that parking lot, lives there, right? And if someone knew someone, they would say, hey, listen, I don't know none of these kids, but you actually live here. So can you tell them that guy's not gonna mess up his mother's housing?
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? But the three people that live there, they don't even know each other. So they don't know where that person lives. They don't even speak to each other. You know what I mean? So it's hard for them to
So we have to solve it.
no, that's not how we solve it. Somehow you got to bring that community together because if
All right,
they wouldn't
so
be
I throw
afraid
that
if
out
they
there.
actually know.
What are some of the strategies? What can we do? Because it doesn't seem to you grin at me
ask
without an
me.
answer. What
I
are some
think-
of the solutions?
I think the parties between the 4th of July cookout, the block party, bring some of that strategy together, but at the same point in time, the tenant council, the housing development being involved in that and making sure that they're aware, they're residents of, we want to create this community and bring it back to where we're all knowing one another versus it's a complaint and then I don't know who's complaining or we're having the same issues, but there's a struggle between that communication amongst each other. I think that's where we're trying to say, if we get them all out there, and we've had many different groups participate in our cookout in years past, and they know us, so they see us, they're fine with talking to us, but that younger crowd is someone they don't know, but that younger crowd also has younger siblings or younger children that they bring to these events, so there's a space to be created. I think we just have to figure out how to create that and get people involved, and that's also due to the housing development and the tenant council putting themselves out there in that light with us to really support that.
So I know we can't solve it, I guess, right now, but I want us to give us our best thinking because I can see both sides. Yes, I want people to have, even at 1 o'clock in the morning, if you want to hang out in front of your building, as long as you're doing it respectfully, because someone like myself may not want to necessarily hear all that, what sounds like ruckus to me. And so how do what's the solution? So I want to move on to hear our workforce people, but we do need to figure out, because we're in the thick of it now.
If I can just say, what we're going to do for the summer, right, is we're going to have a presence consistently in that area. We need to have, and it can't be every 4 or 5 hours. It has to be every hour where officers are taking their calls from that location. And if we're there, people are not going to be comfortable to do all that stuff. So the short-term answer is police presence, and I can promise you that we'll be there.
They also here build community, and there's a way we're not doing it, then we have to figure out how to do that. So before I come to your side of the table, I just wanted to, Ms. Wakefield, you hadn't had a chance to say anything. I didn't know if you had anything you wanted to add to the conversation.
I disagree. I agree with the creating the community and bringing the housing authority in to make it a team effort. So I think that'll be a good idea.
And I don't know what that looks like. You know, part of me says, you put sofas out there and say, hey, sit, chill. I want you to hang out. Just want you to do it like this. And I don't know, but let's think some more about it, because the summer's coming, it's not going. Okay, so Ms. Fennerman, I wanted to see what you had to add to our discussion about what's going on from your perspective.
So a few
good to
weeks
see you.
back, the Community Arts Center, Margaret Fuller House, Tutoring Plus sat down and met with the city manager's office and the Department of Human Service Programs. And we really talked about different ways to activate, especially Columbia Park, but also just other events throughout the community. And Russell already spoke to some of them. But the Community Arts Center is going to be doing some different movie night activities in the park. We'll be hosting Columbia Park.
Thank you.
And we'll be hosting our annual community cleanup day that will go throughout the Port neighborhood and then end with a celebration in Columbia Park as well. We're working with Michelle on setting up a calendar and getting all the dates on these together. Any support that we could get around this calendar, I think, would be great, because I know all of us are struggling to get on top of all of these dates and all of these great opportunities, and we want to be able to share them with our families and with the community. It's just really hard to keep up with all of them.
And what's your target age?
So with all of the programming that we're talking about, especially anything that's activating the park space, it's family friendly, so youth up to adults and elders. I was also thinking to your question about how do we change the narrative around the neighborhood a bit. I do wonder if we could utilize CCTV and their mayor's students over the summer months. I think it could be a really interesting project for them to work on. And then just to the conversation around the music videos, in some ways it's really amazing that they're organizing themselves that well and doing something that they are passionate about. And I'm curious if we could figure out ways to encourage that in a way that is respectful of the rest of the community.
Thank you. Ms. Farnham.
I think folks have talked a lot about the many things that we have going on. And as Catherine said, we've been meeting with the city manager's office, with Human Services, with several providers in the community to try to figure out, we're all doing a bunch of things. What else can we do to create, particularly, as Catherine mentioned, family-friendly activities? We've got, Kessin named a ton of the things that we're already offering, and some of the new things were mentioned as well, in addition to some of the I think they're called courtside cinema, that's going to be happening on the court at Clement, movies on the court at Clement Morgan, hosted by the Community Arts Center. We're also going to be, for the second year in a row, sponsoring a community fishing day. So it's a field trip organized by the Community Arts Center and James Pierre in particular, to get young men and women, I don't know if the target age was 17 and older, 16? Yeah, 16 to like 24. And the idea is to invite them on a deep sea fishing trip, getting them out of their element, literally, and providing mentors. And so they piloted it last year. I think it was a success, and they're doing it again as a way to try something different. In particular, they were last year trying to recruit some of the young people who were engaged in non-positive activities in the park to attend the fishing trip and to recruit mentors from community-based organizations to accompany them. I can't remember, did any police officers go on that trip last year? No? Don't know if that's the right move, but the idea is to have a different experience, take it outside of Cambridge. And so we're going to be funding that again from the city and trying something new.
That sounds great.
Yeah, it's I think a really unique approach to thinking about how to engage with young people who maybe haven't been making all of the best choices, or helping them figure out a different way. I'm trying to think what else. We've got, a number of arts in the park activities going on. We're trying to, in addition to all of the basketball leagues, one of the things that we're doing with the Let's Move campaign, so there's free lunch at Green Rose twice a week all through the summer. We've added a free dinner to accompany the 2 nights a week at Senate Park basketball, so that families and young people who are attending, because those are Monday and Wednesday nights, so the free food program will be offering dinner
At Senate?
At Senate twice a week throughout the summer as well.
What time?
6, starts at 6. There's also,
And that's being coupled with something, other activity, and what's that other
so
activity?
the other
is that?
activity, it's the Little Runners Basketball League, which attracts, so that's the younger children, it's 9 to 11-year-olds, and so they come out with lots of family members in support, and so the food for free will be happening there, so that anyone present in the park can have dinner at night. And there'll be, we're trying that with the book bike, so there's free lunch and the book bike and the Let's Move that happens twice a week at Green Rose, and we're gonna have an evening, I don't have the date here, but trying to put together this calendar, an evening book bike, Let's Move, and free dinner at Clement Morgan as well. So we're trying to, there's a date, I just can't find it. I think it's August 6th, but I'm not sure.
Does that start?
There'll be a farmer's market that night as well. I know that, in Clement Morgan.
And when does that start?
First week in July.
Till Labor Day?
Till Labor Day. Might be the week before Labor Day.
Okay.
So as Catherine said, our job is to try to put together, there are regularly happening activities in all of the 3 parks in the port, as well as some special events that are happening several times throughout the summer. So trying to put together some kind of way for us all to know what's going on.
And just to ask, do we know if Alexandria is doing anything in what we used to call Technology Square? You know, it's that big, huge open space. It abuts Newtown Court in Washington Elms. Is there anything that they're doing that's drawing our community out of the neighborhood, but still in the neighborhood?
Nothing that I know of. That doesn't mean nothing's happening.
Catherine?
I think they're doing a summer lunchtime concert series.
That the community is welcome to come to?
It's open, but whether or not people feel like it's for them is
This is the other
another
thing.
question.
And we won't talk about Novartis, although we should. Because that is part of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I find Alexandria Realty in particular very supportive of neighborhood things. So I was just curious if they were doing anything, and if they are, maybe my office can reach out to them to say if it's something that is community, and community is actually invited to come to it, then please advertise it so that we will.
I know one of the things we had been talking about, it's not finalized, but when we were doing some of our brainstorming meetings, was whether or not the Central Square Business Association would be helping to sponsor some. We were thinking in particular having them help to sponsor the Women's World Cup.
The
viewing
Women's,
party.
what World Cup?
The
Soccer?
women's, yes. The Women's World Cup. So we're working CSBA along with the Phoenix Landing in getting a big screen set up and having a big event for the Women's
Something
World Cup
outside.
final.
Outside, so maybe that's something you could ask Alexandria to do. Weather permitting, of course.
Maybe,
It's I apologize for not knowing much about sports, but that's something that's a community activity and that generates a following, that might be a nice thing to do. Anything else, Michelle?
There probably is, and like I said, as Catherine mentioned, we're trying to put this together so that there really is sort of a, if you look at the 3 parks in the port, trying to offer activities and paying close attention, particularly to Clement Morgan.
Right.
And trying to make the park belong back to the community again, so that the
Exactly.
families, in particular the families of Columbia Terrace, feel comfortable bringing their children outside and
Right.
participating in the park. So trying to have some very active activities, some not so active activities, but where the park feels like it belongs to the neighborhood again.
So one thing I would like folks to ask, and I'm going to have to talk to Neil, everything that we've mentioned, and I certainly am taking notes, I know Neil's taking notes, how do we get this into one document? And I don't know quite how to do that, but I know he has everybody's email. So when we step away from this, we may say, give it to us, but I don't want like 9,000 pieces of paper. I want something that we could put into one document, and then we figure out how do we then reproduce it in such a way that people know it's available to them. Susan?
On the workforce development front, we are trying to think about how to close down certain gaps, and particularly gaps that might affect the 18 to 24-year-old population. And one small change that we've made about, I think it was last year, we changed the upper age limit for the mayor's program. For years and years, you were eligible for the mayor's summer youth employment program between the ages of 14 and 18. But we realized that we were losing some of those students who were graduating high school and maybe not going on to college, who were possibly 19 years old, but still very much needed a job or a way to engage with us. And so now the eligibility is from 14 to the summer after you graduate from high school, because we don't want to lose anybody at that critical
14
time.
to the summer after you graduated from high school, regardless of how old you might be.
Yes, that's right. It's really an awkward phrase to put on a flyer. Like we haven't found a good way to say it yet, but what you said is exactly right. The other thing that we are doing for that age group, we piloted a new program last year called Next Up, which is Next Up. And Next Up is like the offspring of our Cambridge Works Transitional Jobs program that we've been running for 10 years. Although that program serves residents age 18 to 35 who have some kind of barrier getting in the way of employment. What we had noticed in the last few years was that the younger adults were not doing well in that program, that we were losing some of those 18, 19, 20-year-olds. They weren't making it all the way through. And we realized that that age group has a different kind of need from older adults. And so we spend some time thinking about what a program would look like for that group. And we designed this program, which, like Cambridge Works, is also kind of a 3-month-long program, although we continue coaching and counseling well after the 3 months are up. And like Cambridge Works, the program offers some classes, paid internships, and one-on-one counseling. But it's really more of a career exploration kind of program. It's targeted at young people who have graduated from high school or have an equivalent, a GED or a high set, but either have not gone to college or tried college and it didn't work out for them, and they're a little bit lost, and they don't have a plan. So our intention is to help those young people, to hold on to them, give them a little bit of income, and help them come up with a plan. And at the same time, we're also in terms of thinking about the gaps. We're also rethinking a little bit about our employment services that we offer at the high school and hoping to beef that up so that during the school year, when there are teens who are thinking about jobs or need some income or want that immediate gratification, we can be there for them and try and do a better job of getting them connected with employment.
Great, thank you. We've been joined by Dr. Carolyn Torf from the school department. Welcome, thank you for joining us. So you've heard what pretty much that we've been talking about, which is how do we keep our neighborhoods safe? And we focused a lot on the port, a little bit on North Cambridge, but mostly on the port. And I don't know if, from the school department standpoint, is there anything that you want to add or ask, share that something that you know the school department's doing that we should know about?
Well, first, good evening, everybody. The one thing I did think about, Catherine mentioned CCTV when the conversation was about, so how do we get the good news out? And I do think that that is always important in terms of narrative, because people would just, it's human nature. The narrative can be spun in a way and get out of our control very quickly. But the thing that I've learned over time around trying to share the good news, two things. One is, finding whatever that consistent story is and sharing it multiple times over many technological tools. And so when Catherine mentioned CCTV, in my head, I was wondering, okay, so if there could be a series of stories, because there were a lot of stories that were shared, I think even before I came in the room, but that series of stories that was developed, so it's almost a package of sorts, and it was on CCTV, but it was also on Instagram and Snapchat and Instagram and Facebook and whatever else is the most current tool that that young people and you need a combination, young people and the general public is using, that might be a way to think about how to continually cycle what those stories are. So it's just a thought, a spin-off of some thinking that I heard here this evening.
I think it's certainly something we have to think more about. We've clearly identified some of our troubled areas, and we have extraordinary people in this room, so there's got to be something that we've not missed or need to develop. And I mean, media and technology seems to be what hooks most people, young people in particular. When you said CCTV, I thought, what's this new thing that everybody's into? Podcast? How do we podcast the port? I don't know. But maybe that's something that we do, some sort of, and I look at Russell and Kesson because, you guys are well known in the community. Is that something that could get some legs? Or, is that one way of building community? So I put that out there. I have not heard from you, so I don't know if you wanted to add anything. Please identify yourself for everyone. And is there anything, and I haven't heard from...
Actually, I'm hearing more.
To listen?
Yeah,
Okay,
just listening.
that's good,
So,
that's
yeah.
good.
Thank you.
I think we've heard from everybody but Adam. Adam, did you want to add anything?
I only will add one thing that I didn't hear mentioned. It's just the yearly collaboration of CPD and Human Service Programs around the door-to-door campaign. We did that this year. We got out to 2,800 doors that we got the information on, and a number of the things that you mentioned about youth resources. A lot of those programs that Kesson was naming are all named on there by neighborhood.
And was that focused on the port or just cross-targeted?
It's the whole city. It's all of the large apartment complexes in the city, from North Cambridge to the port to East Cambridge, 2,800 units. And we probably talk to a third of the people when we knock on a quarter to a third of the people actually answer the doors. We have real interactions with folks, and we get a lot of information out. So.
I think that's excellent. Do we do an intensive door-to-door in this target area at the Elms? Would that make a difference?
Yeah.
knocking on doors and saying, you know, we know this has been a troubled area right here. What would you suggest that we do? And then follow that up with maybe a big potluck dinner saying, this is what we'd like to do. And then we have a podcast. But, I mean, I'm just thinking out loud because you're saying, when you said it's touching each individual family. So if you touch each individual family and say, we hear you. First, if it says we hear you, that they're saying that they're calling, they don't feel heard. And I do appreciate meeting with the tenant council, but the tenant council might not be in that target area. So one thing might be to think about maybe doing a intensive door-to-door right in that spine with people, maybe the whole development saying, well, what would you like to see us do? What do you want us to do differently? I don't know. I kind of cut you off, Adam.
No, I would just say also that we seem to get very good turnout from both from the police department and from DHSP and all the associated departments of people who want to come out and knock on the doors. So there seems to be an appetite for people to do more of it. If that was something I wanted to do, people seem to enjoy it. So,
Dave, did you want to add?
I listened to Lisa Seaton, property manager at Washington Elms Newtown Court, and I've heard the similar complaints from the residents that she talked about, and we've discussed it back and forth. I immediately sent an email to Police Commissioner Bard and told him about the quality of life issues that we were having down there, and he told me that he would put a plan in place, and he has. And I've had communication with Superintendent Elo and Superintendent DeMarco. Quality of life issues are very difficult to solve. I mean, the issues are young people hanging out there at 9:30, 10:30 in the morning. And I know we want to communicate with them, but it's also led to several arrests with young people with handguns down there. So I just want to thank the police department for the efforts that you've put in there. I know they're difficult to resolve, but at the Housing Authority, we're very dependent on the police department, and we're very happy with the response that we've gotten. It's very difficult. I mean, smoking marijuana now and smoking cigarettes is, you know, it's difficult. Drinking, there are young people hanging out at 9:30 in the morning. I'm in church and I get a text message from somebody who lives down there on Harvard Street that the gangs are already there. But it's not illegal for three people to hang around and have a conversation. They're not doing anything wrong. So it'll be good when we do have a meeting set up with the commissioner, and he'll be able to talk about what he can do and what he can't do down there. And that's extremely important that the residents understand that. And it's not easy for him. But he's been very cooperative, as the staff has, and all the police. We're very happy with everything that we've received, and we appreciate it. So I just wanted to extend my thanks. And when the commissioner said he was going to get on it, I read the log every day. Mm-hmm. I see the arrests that are made down there. I know you don't want to make arrests, you want to communicate with people. But when you do communicate with people, inadvertent things happen. And there are 2 firearm arrests that's 2 loaded firearms that were taken off the street at the corner of Harvard Street and then at Main and Portland. That could have resulted in a shooting.
Right.
You know, so when the commissioner said, I'll take action, these 2 arrests are part of what he said. So I'm looking forward to the meeting. The meeting is June 24th on a Monday, and we'll have the tenant council there, and we'll have a bunch of residents there, and of course the police department will be there, and hopefully we can resolve these issues and explain to the tenants that, you know, they have rights. You know, they have the right to hang around their vehicle and shoot the fat with their buddies, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we have to communicate all that. We have to talk to the people, and I'm sure the commissioner will be able to do that and put the residents at ease. So the plan that they have in place over the summer, I'm very pleased with it, is our superintendent of operations. So thank you.
Thank you. So as we wind down a little bit, a couple of things that I think are takeaways, and then I'm going to go around the room and say, so what else should we do or what else should we know? And then in a couple of weeks, I want us to get back together and kind of talk about where we are and how things are going. So what I heard was, at least I said it, I'd love to have some sort of calendar, some way that we get all this information. And and I don't know if it's electronic or what, but how do we get the good word, how do we get the word about what we're doing? I mean, I'm sort of amazed and overwhelmed with the amount of things that we're doing. But on the other side, I also know there's this thing about we're missing some people. We do still have some places where things are not going well, deeply embedded in our communities and to a lesser degree in our squares, and it's not quite summer yet. But so about the good things that we are doing, how do we then tell that? What's the good stories? How do we flip? Let's have the other side of particularly the port and Central Square. You know, we just last Monday night, we just took a vote to have, to authorize the bid, the Business Improvement District in Central Square. And what that will ask is that the Cambridge businesses, the property owners are actually going to put money into Central Square to improve Central Square. So that's on top of everything that the city's already doing, you know. And so how do we use what the bid's doing with what we're doing as a community to make sure everybody has as good experience in Central Square and in the port in particular during the summer and then through the year? How do we build community? What I've heard said is maybe if we could find a way to build community a little bit better, you know, old and young, different themes. You know, when you said video, again, I thought, I didn't know what to think. And it could never cross my mind that someone would be doing sort of a rap video, goes to show you I must be getting old. And so how do we then get that? Even that, how do we build on that? And then something that Adam said is if we did such a successful job with door-to-door across the housing developments, maybe we should go back and do maybe something door-to-door like in this troubled area. So I know one of the things I'm gonna ask each of you to do is to send by email what you're doing. So, and try to find a way to compress it if possible into a calendar that can be pushed back out into the community and being used by people that we want to take advantage of it. I want us to get together in a couple of weeks to report on what's going well and what trouble spots we're still seeing. I'm particularly interested in with this rift between Somerville and Cambridge. Is this something that we can somehow make go away? And I don't know. Russell and I are going to talk about July 6th, so that's not going to go away. So having said that, that's sort of my ask from each of you is to send to us what you're doing, and if you can put it in, what's the best way to receive that information, other than just by email? Just send it to me, D. Simmons at Cambridge MA, and we'll do our best to see what we can compress. And I'll also reach out to Alexandria to see if they're doing something. You're part of our community. Can we, you know, make sure that the Port neighborhood, Central Square neighborhood knows that you're doing this? So before we close out the meeting, I'm just going to go around and say anything that you want to add or ask. And because you're right there, I'm going to start with you, Steve.
You know, you asked the question, what else should we do? I love this idea of CCTV. I love the idea that that we get that message out through multiple stories, which is perfect. But I think it has to be person-based. It has to be personal. We have to tell a real story of an individual or individuals, not what we're doing so much, but individualize it. But I want to go mainstream media, though. I want somebody like a Chronicle. I want somebody like, you know, some of the connections that Jeremy has and others have with mainstream media to run a couple of stories related to what Cambridge is doing, why Cambridge is so successful with all the programming that we're doing, and all the outreach efforts that we're doing here. It's just amazing. And to put this into perspective, it takes a large screen media to actually get that message out, to replicate it to other communities. And then you asked the story, what else should we know? And that's a little more difficult for me off the top of my head because we've talked about so much. I can't think of right now, but you know, it might come to me, but I did have something, but that's okay. But that was the other question you asked, but off the top of my head, I just forgot, I'm sorry.
That's right. Jeremy?
The one thing that I think we've drawn a great crowd with in the past has followed a major incident, and it's the peace walks.
Oh, right.
But being proactive with doing those, rather than reactive, I think is really, those are powerful in terms of getting people out of their buildings and meeting people. And the two that we had last year, I was really impressed with and was pleased to be a part of. And the turnout was excellent. And one of them was in response, if I recall correctly, to a major incident. The other one was more proactive. And if we can have a steady diet of those on different nights throughout the course of the summer, I think that could be really effective in terms of bringing the community together in a positive way. And just the other kind of random idea, as Superintendent DeMarco was talking and listening to previous conversation, is there a way that we can harness some of the talent that we have in different parts of the city and bring it together if a focus, and much of it has been tonight, on the port and the video concept. We've got such a talented group of individuals within the hip hop transformation group, as an example, that are working on refining their craft, that have a passion, and bringing them together with a separate group that's trying to pull together these videos. If we can channel that energy in a really positive way,
Be their stand.
that could be a really powerful opportunity, and maybe culminate the summer with a hip hop transformation concert in the port. So just a random thought, but
I like it.
there's a lot of opportunity here.
Thanks, Jeremy. Adam?
Just a plug that the department just put out its 2018 crime analysis report, which you can find on our website. It breaks down a lot of stuff by neighborhood. And since it's like a neighborhood-based discussion, you can find lots of statistics about the port last year, as well as other neighborhoods. It also does tell a really positive story about how violent crime, like Superintendent DeMarco said, has gone way down in the city. And that's reflected here. So go online, get these.
Thanks, Adam. Dave?
I forgot the question.
Any thoughts, last words, what we didn't say, what you thought about, what we should do? Just want to applaud, that's okay too?
I can't think of anything, to be honest with you. Most of what I deal with are with elderly and how we communicate with
We
the...
haven't talked about them at all, but.
Yeah, we haven't, and that's really where I deal with so much with the elderly and with the police department and with our residents, but I can't think of anything that we haven't mentioned already.
It's okay. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin.
So yeah, as you look around, you definitely see many of the key stakeholders in the city in the room, but you also notice who's not here. So maybe for the next meeting, we can think about what we can do to get the folks in the room that should be in the room. So the other large management companies, you mentioned HRI before, relating to Columbia Terrace, Harvard, MIT. Maybe looking at alternative days or times of day. I know folks get busy at, night in the summer. Maybe a morning or afternoon meeting could get some more folks in the room and get some more, collaboration.
Thank you. Shanita?
Shanrita, and no,
Shanrita.
I don't have anything to add.
Thank you. Kessin?
What I'm thinking about when we talk about what else we could do comes down to some things with the music and where the young people are right now. As they age out of a hip-hop transformation, there's no second outlet for them in terms of studio space, recording time, or healthy space to produce these videos or hone their craft. So as a city, that's something that we talk about these young people with, not being able to afford the actual studio time and things of that nature. What we can think about there is if we can, I know there's the Loop Project, I think that, the Loop Lab, yes, the Loop Lab, but they also push these young people out at a certain age too. And after that, it's like, what do they do next?
That age group, what would you say is, when do they age out typically?
I think Loop Lab is 24, and we're talking 16 to 30 in the projects that we're doing and things of that nature. So we really got to think about that 25 to 30-year-old gap that we're still not touching with the young people, still trying to find and hone their craft. So that's something to think about. We have these programs, but once they hit 24, they're pushed out the door and they're right back on the street and trying to figure out what to do to make those things happen.
Thank you. Lisa?
I'm really excited about something you had said, Councilor Simmons, regarding turning the corner. in creating our own story, putting something positive out there. I'm excited about what I'm hearing about approaching this in a balanced way with the programs that I'm hearing from Russell and from Kessin, and even from our superintendent here, that it's not just about, showing police force, but in engaging the groups and getting to know the residents in the neighborhood. And I like what you had said, that folks need to come together, and folks really don't know each other as people move, out and into the community. We need to think about, and Kessin will talk offline about getting something, or talk about organizing some sort of an event to get the residents to know each other and to, feel comfortable coming into the office and, saying something about what they know. So I'm excited about the conversation that we're going to have going forward.
Thank you.
And if I think of anything, I'll email you.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Turk?
Thanks. Something that occurred to me when I was hearing the conversation about Somerville. The Cambridge Public Schools has a really good relationship with the Cambridge Police Department. Mm-hmm. And then the superintendent and I also have a really good relationship with our counterparts in Somerville. So I think if we can be working together, especially where there may be school-aged individuals that need some additional support, then that's sort of the offer and suggestion of, I think that's a place where we could also work together.
Thank you. Russell?
The port needs their pullback.
The port needs to pull back.
Yes.
Okay. I would say the Alexander Realty, that big green space we want to be a pool. Port needs its pullback.
And
Thank
just
you.
to add to Dr. Turk, we have a great relationship with Somerville PD, so I think there is some good work that we could do together. And I just want to say one thing as far as, I think a lot of times when the police get on scene to kind of quell those disturbances, we almost add more fuel to the fire. And I think one of the things that we could use is some community ambassadors who are some leaders in the community. They can help us disperse these groups in a peaceful, non-confrontational way, just the uniform. Even if we try to do it as mellow as possible, a lot of times just our presence just ignites fury. So how do we get people moved along and to be respectful? And I think they'd listen to Russell or Kessin over me. So we really do need some community ambassadors.
And we talked about community ambassadors. I know I had this conversation with Kessin and Russell, having homegrown folks, people that came from the neighborhood. Just want you to know it crashed and burned in the council, but I'll bring it back because it was paid stipends to invite some folks to not be police officers, but to be able to say, hey, you endure for, that is so not cool. But let's develop that conversation, because I believe community ambassadors are good, because for a couple of reasons. One, it could be it's a paid job, we would hope. You're in your own neighborhood and you're doing a good thing and maybe a cool thing. I don't know. And please, and I apologize because I know who you are and I can't call your name to save my life.
Karim. Yes, my name is Karim. So from my understanding,
You're from the Muslim Society of
Yeah,
Boston.
I'm working as a community manager at the Islamic Society of Boston, the mosque in Prospect Street. So we have two programs for our youth. First program, age from 5 years to 11 years, and this run every Saturday. And starting from 1st of July will be every day till the 1st of August. And from our youth age from 14 to 18, and this run in Roxbury, the big mosque. This include around 180 from our youth, from the greater Boston area, and it has a lot of travel, local and international, and a lot of activities. So this is where our programs run and the timing. Also, I like the idea of our lady here for using our social media channels to control the narrative for any incident happen in the city. We can agree on a certain story, and we can share it through all our social media, WhatsApp or Facebook pages, so we can deliver the right message to the community. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for being here. Ms. Fenneman?
I think just to build on the community ambassadors idea, I know that a lot of the middle schools are doing peer mediation programs, and the high school has a great conflict mediation program as well. So thinking about that as a pipeline and a resource for the community.
Thank you so much.
So I'm reminded of Port Pride Day, which happens every September, as a way to remind people why we love the port.
Right.
And just thinking about, I know we've already started the planning process, but how do we maybe engage the Housing Authority a little bit in the planning this year of how do we make that, it's an existing event, how do we, come and meet your neighbors? How do we add something to that? And then just another plug, because this Saturday is Hoops and Health
Right.
in the coast, and making sure that people come out to
Thanks,
that.
Michelle. Susan?
I had this idea last year, and I'm not sure if it's at all possible, but when I heard about the fishing trip for some young people who are perceived as maybe causing some problems around the neighborhood, I thought, what if they could come back and we could sponsor a fish fry for the community in the park, which would be a way to sort of change the story. These would be young people who would be actually giving back to their community by helping with the celebration.
Great idea. All right. So a ton of great ideas. I just want a recap. We're going to, yes,
I just got to tell her one thing.
say again.
So last year when we went on the fishing trip, nobody wanted that part of the fishing trip. Everyone said, I'm taking my fish home. Like, I'm not going to the park so you can grill it. Like, everyone that caught fish said, I'm taking my fish home.
Okay, maybe we'll just buy some fish and we'll pretend that it came from.
Huh? Free food's always a good.
No, there it is. So you don't have to give up your fish. We're just going to cook some fish so you can get the idea of what it was. Okay. No, I understand. You might want to take a couple pictures of it, and say this is what I did. So actually, this was a great meeting. I really appreciate everyone coming in this crazy weather. Just with a couple of reminders, we're going to sort of meet in a couple of weeks to recap and report back. There's some things that we want to try to talk about. So one, please email what's going on in your neighborhood. Two, we will reach out to other people. You're right, we did not have, and it's not because they weren't invited, maybe they just need another phone call, our management companies, because it's really important for them to be here. But also, they're doing a ton of things, and I don't even know if they also know what we're doing. So that'll be, and if we can, it will be right after the 4th of July, and we'll already be in the midst of what we're doing, but it'd be good to have them there. I will talk to Alexandria about, having some sort of community event, and then we can talk about what it would look like. I don't know anything about social media, but I think the social media idea is great. And so whoever is good at that and wants to at least talk it through a little bit, Kesson, Russell, Kareem, maybe, looking at the younger people in the room that might have those skills. I know how to say your name right, Shanrita, maybe, you might be. Anyways, the idea is, first of all, I do again want to say thank you, because the more we talk to each other, the more we think and work collaboratively together, the better our city is going to be. We have a good city. We want it to be a great city for everybody. So we'll send you an email just kind of saying recapping, just send your events. Let's see if we can get them on the calendar. Some of the things that we talked about that we'll review in a few weeks. Have a great 4th of July, and thank you so much for taking your time to be with us this evening. This meeting is officially adjourned.
Can I add last thing?
Yes.
We are planning to do a community barbecue between Faith Church and
Faith
Tremont.
Lutheran?
Yeah, and the Tremont Shul and our mosque
And
to
what's the
bring
date?
our
What
community.
date is
We
that?
we didn't get the date, but it will be in the end of the summer.
Okay, so please,
Yeah,
please let
so
Neil
to-
know, or come back after the
everyone
next
is invited,
meeting.
also.
Make
Yeah,
sure we
yeah.
have your email, 'cause I don't think we had a sign-in sheet, or I didn't use it.
We had one up there. Tell everyone to sign in on the way out.
If you